This is Goku's son, DBZ, and today, in honor, of course, coming out this weekend, AntMan, I thought I would do a countdown of the top 12 Marvel heroes. Now, it's going to be based, of course, as always, on opinions from Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and even now I'm looking at opinions on popular websites like Tumblr, just to get a more well-rounded view. And this will be both from fans of the movies as well as fans of course, the video games, the animated series out there, and of course, comics. So, don't expect it based on, like, the popularity on the list based on strictly who's popular thanks to the movies, but overall picture influence-wise. So, let's get started. And, oh yes, and next week will be the top 12 DC heroes, so stay tuned for that. But here it is. Coming in at number 12. From the X-Men universe, the mentor figure, Charles Xavier of the Xavier Institute. Obviously, a very influential figure from the X-Men universe, of course. There really is, if you talk to anybody who calls themselves an X-Men fan or consider themselves a real Marvel fan, take my word. If they're a Marvel fan, then they're going to know who Charles Xavier is, or rather, Professor X. Obviously. Coming in at number 11, Captain Marvel. And it will be the female Captain Marvel, which is actually the more popular of the two versions of Captain Marvel from, of course, Marvel. Not the Captain Marvel from DC, which they renamed Shazam, of course. And, interesting character. I don't personally know too much about Captain Marvel. Now, Charles Xavier, Professor X, I've watched all of the X-Men movies, though I wish I hadn't watched two of them. I've watched the 90s animated series, X-Men Evolution, and even the short-term anime X-Men series. Haven't read too much of the X-Men actual comics, though, unfortunately. But X-Men has some of the more interesting characters, I think, of different Marvel universes, without a doubt. But here is the next. Coming in at number 10. His movie just came out this weekend, AntMan. Now, of course, unlike the Ant-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ant-Man of the comic universe was, of course, one of the founding members of the Avengers, obviously, and he was also the one who actually created Ultron, not, of course, Tony Stark, like in the Cinematic Universe. There's a lot of definite differences between, obviously, the comic universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But to be fair, I'm actually going to be curious to see the live-action Ant-Man movie. I'm debating whether or not to make it possibly my first movie review or not yet. I haven't decided. I'm probably going to see it either tomorrow, which is Monday, or next Monday. Haven't decided yet. Coming in at number 9. From the comics and one of the members of the Avengers, Black Widow. Which is an interesting character. Now, to be fair, I will say in the cinematic universe, I think Scarlett Johansson does a very good job at the role of, obviously, Black Widow. Interesting character. Unfortunately, I don't really know too much, even though I'm a big fan in Marvel stuff. I just never really was as much into the normal Avenger comics and stuff, I guess, as much. I was always more of a fan. I grew up, like, Marvel-wise, I grew up on SpiderMan for the most part. With a few others, like Blade, and a few other Marvel characters. I mean, I'm more into Marvel now than I was back then. And to be fair, though, I will say, I've loved for a little while the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. I actually started reading those comics before the movie came out. because I was actually kind of curious, because I'm into sci-fi and stuff, and I thought Guardians of the Galaxy appealed to me a little more than, say, the Avengers did. But that's just me. It just depends really on the person, I guess you could say. Coming in at number 8. The Incredible Hulk, aka Bruce Banner. Now, of course, the Hulk is really popular, obviously. And I never was the biggest Hulk fan. Sorry. I just don't get the appeal. Yeah, it's cool that he grows into a green guy and has like super strength and stuff, but I'm not as much about the mindless destruction and things. I actually like more intelligence. Now, some people would say, well, they eventually did do a little more intelligence with Hulk character, like in series like World War Hulk, or things of that nature. Maybe, but I just never was a big Hulk fan. And I'm still not the biggest Hulk fan, to be fair. Frankly, he's just one of the Avengers I don't really care much about, frankly. I think he's a very overrated Marvel character, but that's just my own personal opinion, of course. Just depends on the person. Just like, for instance, some people like, for instance, but anyways, coming in at number 7. Black Panther, which I can honestly say I do not know too much about. I personally actually want to learn more about the Black Panther character, because from what I've heard and stuff and read so far about Black Panther, it seems like a really interesting character. So I'm definitely one of the few Marvel heroes I'm actually interested to learn more about. Over time, he's one of the only Marvel characters I'm actually interested in learning more about than the ones I already like. Coming in at number 6, Doctor Strange. And I can honestly say Doctor Strange is one of the few I'm actually started checking a little bit out. Thanks to the crossover in the 90s with the animated SpiderMan series, got me actually check out Doctor Strange. And it's actually really interesting. Doctor Strange really is the only supernatural, magical part of the Marvel comic universe. Very interesting character. Of course, also, you had somebody else that once upon a time was being taught by the same master that taught Doctor Strange. Well, of course, the basics, Doctor Strange once upon a time was a surgeon, and an accident happened, and he can no longer use his hands and stuff. So he thought he'd try out process, maybe get his ability back to be a doctor, but instead he ended up learning the secrets of myth and, of course, magic, the ancient arts. And over time he gained an enemy when he became taught by, of course, the Ancient One. And that individual had become his sworn enemy is, of course, Mordo. And, of course, Mordo later on becomes sort of a disciple of the greatest evil in the Doctor Strange universe. And, of course, that is the evil being that lives in a parallel dimension. Of course, that being Dormammu, which is perhaps one of the most powerful villains in the entire Marvel comic universe, period. He really is one of the most powerful. But, anyways, I'm actually really looking forward to the Doctor Strange movie next year, mainly because I love Doctor Strange, and also I really love the guy who they cast as Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch. Big Cumberbatch fan, thanks to, of course, the series Sherlock. And I loved him as Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness. But anyways, I digress, sorry. Coming in at number 5, Thor. Which, of course, obviously, they take elements, of course, from the Norwegian, Scandinavian mythology. Though Thor in the comic is spelled different than Thor in, obviously, such as in comics. Thor in mythology only has 3 letters, while Thor in comic has 4 letters. But one thing that remains somewhat the same is, of course, the whole thing build up tension and stuff between him and his adopted brother, of course, Loki, which has become probably the most popular villain, at least, say, in the Marvel Cinematic Movie universe. But in the actual comics, Loki really isn't that big of a major villain in the actual comic universe. He's just become, for some reason, this big fanboy, fangirl, big favorite. Yes, I like the actor who plays Loki, but personally I feel he's a very overrated villain. Sort of like how I feel with the Joker, of course, in DC. But I digress again. Thor, interesting character, and the cinematic universe, I actually liked who they casted as Thor. Thought it was a pretty good casting choice, and I thought he suited. And yeah, they got rid of the helmet and stuff from like in the comic, but to be fair, that's actually maybe a good thing they did different from the comic. Because to be fair, I thought that hat was kind of stupid. But, as I say, that's just my personal opinion on it. But, anyways, coming in at number 4, Captain America. Which is, of course, obviously... Now, at first, people didn't really care much for Captain America because, let's be fair, the Captain America First Avenger movie was okay, but it wasn't really one of the greatest Marvel movies, and didn't really help Captain America shine. I think the First Avenger movie helped him shine a little more. Chris Evans, who played him, I thought, personally, Chris Evans did a good job at the role, compared to, say, as the Human Torch from the first 2 Fantastic Four movies. Now, however, most people now praise Captain America since he, of course, did Captain America the Winter Soldier, which, of course, obviously the main villain was Hydra. Hail Hydra! Which, of course, the OG Hydra was obviously Red Skull. But, yes, Captain America, I will admit, even though it's still not one of my absolute favorite comic book movies, I will be the first to admit that Captain America Winter Soldier was a really good movie. It was very well done, very good action sequences, and no real pacing issues throughout the movie. Unlike some comic book movies, it actually really had no real major flaws whatsoever. Great action, but I still felt, and I did like, though, how they showed and revealed a little bit more stuff about Hydra. That's one thing I liked. I think Hydra is very interesting, and they really need to go a little more in-depth with the Hydra storyline, eventually, hopefully. And that will hopefully eventually introduce us to a great Marvel villain called MODOK. And now, coming in at number 3, the most beloved hero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thanks to one man, Robert Downey Jr., and that is Iron Man. Yes, without a doubt. Iron Man coming in at number 3 shouldn't be really a surprise. Now, if you base it strictly on the cinematic universe, like movie-wise, he'd probably be number 2 or number 1, obviously. Because he defines. And the awesome thing about him playing as Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is basically Robert Downey Jr. gets to play himself and make a boatload of money at the same time while playing basically himself. Really, Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. are really one and the same person, to be fair. Probably one of the best casting, though it was controversial at the time. Still, one of the best casting jobs ever in a comic book movie, period. You could rank Robert Downey Jr., if I had to, say, based on, actual casting as, hero roles, personally, for me, I think the 3 best casting jobs ever was Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark Iron Man, Hugh Jackman as, of course, obviously, Logan Wolverine. Great job on that casting choice. And regardless of what some people say, he may have not played the greatest Peter Parker, but as the character Spider-Man, the wisecracking and stuff, Andrew Garfield. That's just how I feel on it. Now, to be fair, casting of other characters, like, I think incredible casting jobs. Also, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, obviously, and Christian Bale as Batman. I can't deny that. Those were really good, top-notch casting choices. And, of course, of movies people may have forgotten about, Wesley Snipes' Blade was an awesome casting choice. Coming in at number 2, the role Hugh Jackman can play in his sleep, Wolverine. And yes, Wolverine obviously comes in at number 2 because Wolverine is hugely, insanely popular. And really, he became really big in the 80s, in the X-Men comics and stuff. And even larger in the 90s thanks to the animated series, making him so badass. But, definitely, Hugh Jackman is incredible at the role of Wolverine. And yeah, he's going to be defined probably, though he's done a lot of great movies outside of X-Men, to be fair. Still, him as a Wolverine was still awesome. Frankly, he was the only, I repeat, the only redeeming thing probably in X-Men Origins Wolverine. And that's it. He was the only redeeming thing in the entire movie. Everything else about that movie is just pure bad. To say it nicely in any case. Now, some honorable mentions. Black Cat, Thing, Cable, Captain Britain, Colossus, Hawkeye, Iceman, Nova, Scarlet Witch, Cyclops, Daredevil, though he may be a little more of maybe an anti-hero, Gambit, and Scarlet Spider. And now, coming in at number 1, should be nobody's surprise, the most popular character in the entire Marvel Universe. Comic book, and now officially cinematic universe. And that is basically the Batman of Marvel. And that is SpiderMan. And it should be nobody's surprise that Spider-Man would come in number 1 of the top 12 Marvel superheroes list. He is without a doubt the most popular. Because think about it, even though the last Amazing Spider-Man 2 was considered somewhat of a failure at the box office, it still did 700 and like, what was it, 704 or 708 $million. Now, to be fair, that's not bad by any case, over $700 million. But first Amazing Spider-Man did like 800 million, and like some of the years, and I'm still scratching my head why some people are bashing this as the worst Spider-Man movie, because as far as I'm concerned, Spider-Man 3 is the worst by far, after what they did to Venom and everything. And if you want to base like movie-wise, I have to say, I thought personally that Jamie Foxx did an awesome job as Electro. He was really good at the role. And it was probably the best special effects of all 5 Spider-Man movies, and some of the best special effects in any comic book movie, period. It was very well, I thought, very well done. The special effects, for the most part, the acting was good. The music was good. So I don't know why Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets so much bash when it is not the worst. Hate to tell you, and if you personally, like, ask me what I thought was the best Spider-Man movie out of all 5, it's pretty much a toss-up between the first Spider-Man of 2002 and Amazing Spider-Man 1. It's pretty much a deadlock between those two, though I may have to go with Amazing Spider-Man, just because of Andrew Garfield being an Amazing Spider-Man. But I'll cut up this vlog. As always, this is Goku-san DBZ. And I'll see you here next week for the top 12 DC superheroes. So stay tuned for that. And also in the future, down the road, I'll be doing a Marvel top 12 villains and top 12 DC villains. And eventually I'll be working on the top 12 villains in comics. That means all universes, not just DC and Marvel, but including third-party companies. And also, I'll be doing the same also for superheroes as well. So you'll have to stay tuned for those future comic book lists. And also, I'll be listing a special top 12 list in the future, my personal top 12 picks for top 12 best comic book movies. Now, that'll be a few months down the road. But, as always, this is Goku-san DBZ, and I hope to see you all here again in YouTube land. And I'll be doing a comic book review in the next few days of course, issue 1 of Star Wars Darth Vader. Stay tuned for that, and also another video game review I'm getting ready to work on, which will be Soul Blade, which is the predecessor to the Soul Calibur franchise, or Soul Edge in Japan. So stay tuned for all those videos. And I'll see you next time here in YouTube land. And here's a piece to celebrate from one of my view, one of the best JRPGs. It's called Force Your Way Through. The main standard boss theme music for Final Fantasy VIII by Square Enix. Great build-up music, is it not?